This is about a 2-year-old mullein plant, and it keeps blooming. The very first blooms have dried up and died, but I've got some more coming on, and I'm going to go ahead and gather those up because I'm going to make a little bit of a soothing earache oil. You can see how it keeps putting on new plants and new blooms. So I'm just going to be gathering those up, and I'll use a little bit of olive oil. I can use my jojoba oil with some garlic cloves and my mullein blooms, and making some good earache soothing oil for when during this winter or any time when we've got a bad sinus infection or earache. This works really well. But it's funny, mullein they don't all bloom at once. They want to bloom here and there and take their time. So what I'll do is gather up as many as I can, and I'll watch, and as I keep blooming, I'll keep coming out, and I'll keep gathering the blooms up and just adding to the oil. That's the best and easiest way to do that. I didn't plant these mullein plants. Here in Arkansas, up here in the hills, they just grow everywhere. And this year, they are coming up everywhere, right here in our holler. And I was told that you can even gather the blooms that aren't fully bloomed out and use those too. And if you look real close, you can see the blooms. It's little yellow dots that are fixing to bloom, and they say that you can use those too. But I think I'll wait for most of them to bloom and just keep an eye on them. I'm also going to be gathering the mullein seeds from the heads that's already dried up. We've had a long, hot summer. I've got some coneflowers back here, and some of them have already died off, and they're dried up, and I'm going to be collecting those too and taking the seeds. And you can see this one right here, the stem is really dry and the seeds are coming just right out of that head. So this one's ready, and there's a lot of seeds in there. They look like they're just about burned up. Now, some of them will be good and some of them won't. My beautiful zinnias. Every year, I make sure that I come out. As they start dying off, new blooms show up. But as they start dying off and the stems are drying up and the seeds are drying, I start gathering them up, and I get a lot of them too. Zinnias make a lot of seeds, and like I said, some of them will come up and some of them won't, but I always gather up as many as I can. The more you trim your zinnias back, the fuller they'll get. They'll just keep blooming and blooming. Zinnias are one of my favorite flowers to grow here on the homestead. I'm thinking next year I'm just going to grow them everywhere. They're just so forgiving. They take the heat so good. The heat and the dry weather. And they give you back so many seeds. And the butterflies just absolutely love them. If you've never grown zinnias before, please do. So many different colors. You got your burgundies, your reds, your yellows, your purples, your oranges. These have gotten so tall. We've had several storms lately. They got a hard rain and kindly beat down because they've gotten so tall. So you just go through there and you just find all your dried zinnia heads. Make sure they're good and dry though. I like for them to dry out on the stem. Looks like this one got beat down pretty good. They're all falling over. My lavender plant back here is still doing good. I've even got a tomato plant that's trying to come back. So just remember to harvest any of the seeds that you can, whether if it's a vegetable or if it's flowers, because we don't know that one of these days we may not be able to even buy seeds. That could be in the future. So gather them up, not just for yourself, but for others. And keep them going. Pretty oranges, pretty yellows. And they're such a really good cut flower. Look at that, how pretty that is. They're just one of the best flowers to me to grow, to have cut flowers, because they last forever. So now that I've gathered up quite a few seed heads, I brought me some plastic bags out here, and I'm just going to put them in a bag till I can get them inside, and I'll start gathering all the little seeds off the stems. And if I find some that's still not real dry, I'll leave them in the house and let them dry before I put them up. I like to put them in my little plastic bag. Then I'll put them in an envelope and I'll mark them. And if I get very many, I'll put some in the freezer. This right here is one of the stems, the top of it. This is where your seeds are. And you just gather them little seeds up. This one is completely dry. So I'll just take this in the house and gather the mullein seeds out of there. So if anybody needs any mullein seeds, and I can't guarantee that it'll grow any mullein, but I should have plenty of them, I think, if I can get them out of there. So I'm just going to gather all my seeds up, my mullein blossoms, and take them in the house. We've been gathering up dried peas off the vine. You can see this one, the stem is still green, so I'll probably leave this one out and let it dry a little bit more before I pull the seeds off of it. But we got quite a few cow peas, red ripper peas that we're letting dry on the vine, so we'll have plenty to plant next year, and I can even put them up to cook later, just like any other dry bean. I canned some and I put some up in the freezer, so now it's time just to let them dry on the vine and put them up dry. So we're going to take everything in the house and we're going to get busy making our oil for our earaches, and then we're going to make us some sourdough flour tortillas. Okay, all we're going to do is we're going to take our little mullein flowers that bloomed, and like I said, I'll keep adding to it as they bloom. And we're just going to take a couple of big cloves of garlic. You're just going to throw them in there like that. And I'm going to cover it with a good olive oil. Or you can use something like your jojoba oil would be good. And you just want to make sure you cover all that. Make sure it's all good and covered. And I'll put the lid on this, and I'm going to put it in the pantry in the dark for about 6 weeks. and then I'll strain it, and then our earache oil should be ready. Now you can let it, you can do it for about 6 months if you want to before you strain it. That's just up to you. But like I said, I'll be adding to it as that mullein plant keeps blooming like that. The little flowers keep blooming. And I might even put more garlic in it. This is my dried red ripper peas. And I just wanted to show you that that right there is your peas. You can save them for planting next year, or you can save them and cook them like you would any dry pea. So I've got a bunch of them already put back for planting and for eating, and we've got more. I guess we'll be picking peas plumb up till frost. I don't know, but they still are putting off peas. These are really, really prolific peas. Red Ripper or cow peas is what they're called. They're not a purple hull, they're not a black-eyed pea. They're just somewhere in the middle there. But they do taste a little bit like a purple hull. But they're called Red Rippers or cow peas. I get a lot of questions about different recipes using your sourdough starter, using your sourdough discard. Me and Danny love homemade tortillas, and I haven't made any in a while. My kids grew up on homemade tortillas. We never bought store-bought back then. They would get in there with me, and we've got a tortilla press, and they would help me make homemade tortillas. But I haven't made it in a while. And I've got my sourdough starter, and I thought, I'm going to come in and I'm just going to make a light supper. I've got some beans, and I've got cheese and different leftover things in the refrigerator, so I thought, let's just whip up some really good sourdough flour tortillas. It'll be so good. I can remember as a little girl, I lived in Pasadena, Texas till I was about 13, and that's when I moved up here to Arkansas, and I've been here ever since. But I lived in a subdivision, just house after house after house, and on my left side, and the houses were pretty close, they were such a good family. Their last name was Benavides, and they made some of the best homemade tortillas. In fact, Miss Benavides made them every day. And I'd go over there as a little girl, and I'd sit and watch her make them. And, I mean, their tortilla is what we eat bread, they eat tortillas with everything. And they were so good. She'd just be making them up, and she'd throw them in that pan and cook them, and she'd give me one, and it was just the best thing I think I ever thought I ever ate. So she had 9 children, and they were all hard-working people. She stayed home. The daddy, he worked construction, and all the kids that were older, they worked too, and the younger ones went to school, and they were a good family. And she'd just let me sit there beside her while she made them tortillas, and I was just amazed, I think, and I have loved them ever since. So let's make us some homemade tortillas. And I wanted to just go ahead and just make regular tortillas, but I had my sourdough starter, and I've been feeding it, and I fed it this morning. And so I thought, you know what? I'm just going to make some tortillas, some sourdough tortillas. Now, I've been feeding this, it's going on 5 days, and it is bubbly in there, and it has this really yeasty but sweet smell to it, and that's when you know it's a good sourdough starter. Now, I've had sourdough starters that I just paid a lot of attention to, and you'd go to smell it, and it didn't have that sweet smell, but I'm not saying real sweet, but it's just got that certain, what we call sweet smell, yeasty sweet smell. And I've had some of them that smell like I had been fermenting for making alcohol or something. I mean, it was pretty stout. And then I've even had, once before, I had some that did not smell good at all, and I discarded it and started over. But if you've got some sourdough discard, use it for making these tortillas. You're going to love them. Now, I started my sourdough starter this time. I had some of my milled berries. These are the hard red. I had milled some. So that's what I started out. And I think for 3 days, that's what I fed it, was that my milled wheat flour. And then the 4th and 5th day, I just fed it some regular bread flour, and or you can use all-purpose, or you can start it and feed it with nothing but bread flour or nothing but all-purpose. Don't think that you've got to have freshly milled flour or anything like that to start your sourdough starter. It's just, it does work really well, and it just makes a really good starter. Now I'm going to put down below in my description box, I've got a couple of videos making sourdough starter. And the first one I think I ever showed y'all was my sourdough starter that I make with yogurt. And a lot of people had a lot of good things saying that that was the first time that their starter, they had good luck with their starter. So that would be a good one to start with. And I'll put it down in my information box, that video. But this one's doing good. And so I'm going to get a cup of this. That's what I'll be using today. And I'm going to use my KitchenAid today. And there's not very many ingredients in here. So let's get started making our tortillas. I've got 2.5 cups of just all-purpose flour right here. I'm going to put a teaspoon of salt, and I'll put the recipe down in my description box too. I'm just going to turn this on for just a minute. I'm just going to stir that flour and salt together just a little bit. And if you wanted to, in your bowl with your flour, you could have put your salt in there and went ahead and mixed it in the bowl and then put it in there. Whichever way is the easiest. Now, let's see, I think my sourdough goes next, yes. So, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add my 1 cup, and this is a 1/2 cup and measuring cup here. And you can see that my sourdough is kind of thick, but it's not real thick. It's not to where I have to dig it out. Sometimes it's that way. It just depends on how dry it is in the house, how much liquid. Let's see, the 4th day and 5th day, I didn't even add any liquid. I just added my flour because I didn't want a really loose sourdough. So what I'll do is, since I took out a cup, I'll feed it. I'll feed my sourdough. I'll feed it about 1/4 of a cup of flour. And probably, it depends, I might add maybe just a tablespoon of water to it. Just depends. I don't like it too thin. Now I'm going to start blend this up real good. I got flour everywhere. I am one messy person. So I'm just going to blend the sourdough starter in with my flour and salt. Okay, I have got a half a cup of warm water, and I'm going to just slowly pour it into my mixture while it's mixing. That's a half a cup, and make sure that your water is pretty warm. Not scalding hot, but pretty warm. I've got 1/3 of a cup of olive oil. I'm going to let this mix. I'm going to let it mix so it all comes together. Now I'm going to set my sourdough starter over here so that I remember to feed it here in a little bit. I'm going to kind of scrape down the sides a little bit. You know, sometimes I just don't know about this big old KitchenAid. It just sounds like it's just, anymore, it sounds like it's struggling so hard, and it shouldn't be because there's not really that much flour in there. But I'm just starting to wonder about it. That's why I love my Nutri-Mill Artiste mixer. That is one big daddy of a mixer now. If you see that your dry bits are not coming together, put you a little bit more warm water in there. Okay, my dough has come together. There's no dry flour in the bottom of my bowl. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let it mix for just a couple of minutes. I let it mix for about 2 to 3 minutes. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to let it sit here. I'm just going to let it sit here for about 10 minutes and just let it rest. Let it chill out just a little bit. And then it won't be long. We'll be making our tortillas and frying them up and eating them. While our dough is resting, let's go ahead and feed our sourdough. So I took a cup out, and there's probably about a half a cup left in here. And the reason that, like I said, that it's this color is because I used fresh milled, hard red flour berries. And that's why it's that color. Even though I've been adding bread flour to it, to me it just makes a really good starter. So what I'm going to do to feed it is I'm going to put 1/4 of a cup of bread flour. And I'm going to stir it because I want to feel it to see how loose it is or how thick. Now that's just a little bit too thick for me. So I'm going to add a teaspoon of filtered water. If you live in the city, I have well water. So my water's fine. Put a little bit more. Okay, it's pretty thick. I'm going to say that I'm going to add about 2 teaspoons to 1/4 of flour. I don't want it too loose. Smells good. So there was a half a cup of starter already in there. So now I'm just feeding it. And I'm going to put it back in my bowl. And the reason I do this is because it's pretty chilly in my house. The air is on, the air conditioner, because we have some really hot days here in Arkansas. So I just cover it up, just like this in my bowl. Because I have had it to where sometimes, if it's full enough, it would rise and come over the top of my jar too. And it'd be all over my table. So anyways, it does good. It's keeping it good and warm. And I don't put no lid on or nothing. So there it is. And tomorrow, whenever I get home from work, I'll feed it again. Now, if I don't think that I'm going to be using my sourdough starter for a while, after feeding it a few times and using it, I'll just stick it in the refrigerator with the lid on it and just let it hang out in there till the next time that I want to make something, and then I'll take it out of the refrigerator and let it come to room temp. Then I'll feed it, and then the next day I can go ahead and make my recipe. It's always worked for me that way. Our dough is rested 10 minutes. I'll take it out. You can see how it feels like, feels kind of like Play-Doh, if I could describe it. It's a real soft dough. When you do that, it's not coming back. We're not going to mess with it much more, but you want to put quite a bit of flour on your table, your work table. And I'm just going to kind of mash this out. And I'm going to cut it in half. And then I'm going to cut it one more time. They don't have to all be that even. Just you know, close enough. So you're pretty much going to get 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, pretty much close to 16 tortillas. And I'm just going to kind of put some of this flour on them. Now, you can take them, and if you want some small ones, I like small little tortillas. There's a small one. This one will be a little bit bigger, but that's okay. This one's will be a little smaller. And you just want to make them in balls. Now if you want them all to be even, you can do it a little bit more precise than I am. Now you can either roll these out with a rolling pin, or you can use a tortilla press if you've got one. And I'm going to be using my tortilla press. I think I'm going to put these two together. One I got just a little small. I've got some beans. We may not have no meat left though. I think Mr. Brown took the meat for his lunch today. So we may be eating a bean burrito. Okay. Like I said, they're not all the same size, but you can You can do it a little bit better than I did. I'm just getting in a little bit of a hurry. What I'm going to do is I'm going to dampen my towel, and I'm going to cover these up, and I'm going to let them sit for about 30 minutes. I've got a damp towel that I'm going to cover these with. Just let them sit and rest for about, you can even let them rest for 2 hours. If you got stuff you need to be doing, housework, and you don't need them right now, you can let them sit there for 2 hours. 30 minutes to 2 hours. Let them sit there with a warm, damp towel on top of them. So you can use your tortilla press if you have one. And what I do is I cut me a freezer bag in half, and I press it out on that, or you can roll it out. Either one. I like for them to be pretty thin, because with the sourdough they are going to kind of puff up just a little. And I got it on very high heat. Or you can come over here and just make sure you put plenty of flour on it though. And you can just roll them out. I know a lot of people don't have tortilla presses. I've had this one for over 20 years. Back when the kids were all at home. I didn't have much money, but I did somehow manage to buy me a tortilla press online. I don't remember where I even got it. It probably says on it, but I can't read it right now. I got my glasses on. So just get it pretty thin. In fact, I can roll it out thinner than I can get it. For some reason on that tortilla press, I just can't seem to get it as thin as I like it. And you can do it in an iron skillet. I'm just using my little electric skillet here. You can put your little oil in there, whatever. I've got peanut oil. I'm heating my beans up. Got me some tomatoes chopped up. And I've got me one of these warmers to put your tortillas in. I got this off Amazon. I think it's in my Amazon store, but I'll look. But once you cook them, you just put them right in there, and they stay. This is insulated, and they stay warm that whole time. I just love it. They've got different colors, probably different brand names. I think I picked this one that got good reviews and of course, it had a rooster on it. But I'm telling you, anytime that I put a corn or flour tortillas in here, they really stay warm. So you're just going to cook your tortillas till they'll bubble a little bit, and they'll start getting brown. That's the way you want them to look. Now your sourdough tortillas are going to look just a little bit different once they're cooked than just your regular. So I'm just going to continue. I think I'm going to roll mine out just because I can get them thinner that way. This is a good one, and I did tighten it up, but I can just get them thinner. But I do like using it. I used it for many, many years. The kids used it when they would help me make tortillas. Sourdough tortillas. Watching that, make sure I don't burn them. You have to watch me sometimes. I can cook, but I can also burn something pretty easy too. That's for sure. Yeah, that one turned out better than my other two because it's thinner. And if y'all can make tortillas without getting flour all over you, you are doing a lot better than I am. And you have to be careful not to get a bunch of flour down in your pan because it'll start burning. I had to turn my beans off. I'll get sidetracked, and I didn't dust that tortilla off, so it got just a little bit of flour in there that I did not want in there. So that one's cooking really good. You want your skillet kind of high. Not so high that you'll burn them up, but I think this was one of my little dough balls. Okay, that's the way I like them, just like that. This one may be too big to put in my, but you know what? I'm just going to fold it up and put it in there, just like that. I'm going to wipe out my skillet because that tortilla had too much flour on that one side. So make sure you dust them off a little bit before you put them in your pan. I'm going to put just a little bit of oil. And there we go. So because I used freshly milled wheat flour, these are going to be a little bit healthier than your regular. Plus the fact that it's sourdough. So I'm going to get the rest of these fried up. And then we'll make us a burrito.
So I want you to look what I got here. I got me a bean burrito. We had a niece when she was a little bitty. We lived on the farm at that time, and she's all grown up and fixing to get married. But when she was little, she called them bean burritos, so that's what we've called them ever since. But I've got some refried beans. I got me some cheese. I got me some tomato and some of that onion and some of them jalapeno peppers. But these aren't the hot; they're the mild. I love the flavor of jalapenos, but I don't care that much for the heat. As much, you know, a lot of heat. And it's on that sourdough burrito.
Take a bite and see what it tastes like.
Oh, it's gonna be good. You know it is.
It'd be something if it wasn't no good. You couldn't feed it to them. You'd have to tell them it ain't no good.
I'm gonna roll it up. I'm gonna roll it up brown. Look at there. That thing rolled up there round with that sourdough. Just a simple food that is so good.
Sourdough with fresh ground milled flour.
Got just a little bit of taco sauce on there.
I feel like that's a little bit of a healthier tortilla for us.
It's so good during the hot weather. You don't have, it's not going to weight you down.
Yeah. That's how I guess maybe the cooks out on the trail, they'd use their sourdough and make them some sourdough tortillas.
That's so good.
It is good, ain't it? I'm fixing to make me one.
It's delicious. All right, you want me to make you one?
I'll make one. Y'all look what Paul's doing.
I done took some of this sourdough tortilla, and I'm going to make me something similar to a sopapilla. I put butter on there, and I've got some cinnamon and sugar mixture. And if you wanted to just really put it over the top, you could put your little bit of honey on there. And let me tell you something, I done tried a piece of it. So if you got a little bit of leftover, shell left over, sourdough tortilla, I guess you'd say.
That one's gotten a little crunchy because it got cold, but it's just right, ain't it?
It was just a little warm a few seconds ago. That's good stuff.
The burritos were good, and you can make tostadas out of them too once they get a little bit crispier like that. But it's a really good tortilla. It really is.
So now I've had dessert. It's really good.
Well, you better share some of that.
I'll let you have some.